Hey guys, and welcome to another GameXplain discussion. I'm your host, Andrew Seegers, and this time we're joined by Derek Binder and Dash Paulson to discuss the news of some classic Rare franchises might be coming back from the dead. So let's get started. So guys, Ken Lobb was recently on the Inner Circle podcast, and he dropped some interesting tidbits. Specifically, that they're looking at bringing back some classic Rare games onto Microsoft platforms in the future. And he specifically mentions that there will be another Banjo, Vivid Pinata, Blast Corps, and Battletoads at some point in the future. Now granted, that's still pretty vague, and that may not be definitively true for all of those, but it sounds like they are definitely looking at the possibility. And he goes on to mention that they know that there's a value to those games, and there's an internal passion for a lot of them, and they have a lot of surprises in store in the near and long future. So at the least, at least one of those is coming in the near future, I think. And he's dropped similar tidbits like this in the recent past as well. So I thought we'd explore what it could mean, and what games could be coming back, and what games we'd personally like to see come back. So, what do you guys take away from these comments from Ken Lobb?
My gut reaction to anything like this is, here you go, I'll toss you a bone. This is, it's hard to get too excited about it, but there is precedent for this already in the fact that Killer Instinct came back. But I think it's notable that I think they mean mainly the franchises. I think if they go forward with these franchises coming back, it's not going to be Rare developing them. Mainly because the Rare that developed all these classics are pretty much gone. They've all gone their own way, and it's a completely different dynamic at Rare. Because they mainly focus on Killer Instinct and stuff. But as far as Killer Instinct, I don't think they handled the majority of the development on that game. So I think it could be like a lot like that, where they just okay, here's a team. You guys take Banjo-Kazooie. You guys take Conquer. You guys take Perfect Dark or Battletoads or whatever, and go from there. So I think we're going to see more of the IP, but maybe not from Rare itself.
Yeah, I think you touched on something really important there, but first, as to what Ken Lobb said, I'm just going to say, show me the receipts, because I'm not saying that he isn't speaking truthfully and that they intend to do that, but we all know they're owned by Microsoft, and Microsoft has had them making Kinect Sports for forever now. So I think it's more of what Microsoft will let them and let them do and approve, because I think there was a news story a while back that Rare was working on something internally of their own design, and Microsoft pretty much said, no, we want you to do this instead, and pretty much just put the kibosh on it. So, I think it's really what Microsoft will let them do versus what, Rare actually wants to do. That said, I've said this many times, and I probably said it here on one of our discussions, a new Banjo-Kazooie game, a new legit Banjo-Kazooie game, not Nuts and Bolts 2, but like Banjo-Kazooie 3 would be like the one thing that could get me to buy an Xbox One, or at least beg a friend to let me borrow theirs for as long as it would take for me to beat it. So I love Banjo so much that, I would be so happy. But I think you touched on an important point, Derek. The team of developers that was responsible for so many of our favorite N64 classics and Super NES classics is gone. So I don't know if it would be the same. It's really hard to say if it would or not.
Yeah, I guess that's partially the question. Does it even matter if Rare themselves makes this game or not? And I am leaning toward it not mattering.
Really?
They may just give the whatever IP to a developer best suited to handle it, much as they've already done with Killer Instinct. With that said, there are still some people from old Rare there, but a lot of the original core minds behind these great games are gone. So it's kind of a weird position, right? But either way, I would love to see the return to some of these games, especially Banjo, as you mentioned, Ash. Banjo-Kazooie is one of my favorite games. Even Banjo-Tooie, I didn't like as much at first, but I've kind of come around on it in the years since. And I adored Nuts and Bolts. I would actually be happy with Nuts and Bolts 2. Although I don't think that's going to happen. I think if we were to get a Banjo game, it would actually be Banjo 3.
I see the merit in Nuts and Bolts. I wouldn't mind a new one, but I have wanted a new Banjo platformer for so long now that I'd much rather have that. It's hard to say if it really does matter if the old team at Rare versus the new team makes a new Banjo game or any other, Rare IP revival, just because we haven't really seen what Rare's capable of. They haven't really done anything other than Kinect Sports for the last several years. So it's hard to say kind of how prepared they are and how qualified they are to make a non or I should say how qualified this new team at Rare is to make a non-Kinect Xbox One game. So I don't know. I mean, what I don't want to see is I'd rather Banjo stay, I guess, quote-unquote dead as it is now, than see a Banjo 3 come out and have it be like an epic Mickey tier platformer.
Oh, geez.
I don't want that to happen. I'd rather it stay in the past and be as awesome as we remember it than try to revive it and fail. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm pretty much down in the same boat as you, Ash. I don't know if Rare could do that. And here's the potential with giving it to another developer if these new guys at Rare are just not up to the task for whatever reason. They can actually, I believe, as another developer, they could probably pull in some of these people that's worked on these games in the past and have them work on the game as a sort of a freelancer. So, hey, we're doing Banjo 3, and it's this team that I can't even think of one off the top of my head. And you know what, Grant Kirkhope, we'd love to have you come back and do the score for this as a freelancer. Would you be up for it? I have a feeling he would say yes in a heartbeat. And that'd be awesome. That'd be something that just to have his name attached, at the very least, you're going to get an awesome soundtrack to that game. And I think that's one of the advantages to having a different developer taking on these games, especially since these other developers could be full of people who love those games initially. And I think that's what happened with Killer Instinct, because nobody was really sure about that game at first, especially the way it was structured. But everything I've seen since then seems like I don't know if it's a huge following, but it definitely has a dedicated following. And that's more than you can say about the nuts and bolts.
That pains me to hear those words.
I've never played Nuts and Bolts, but I don't really hear many people talk about it in a positive light. I think you're the first.
It's such a great game.
You're the first one I've heard
does not
about
agree
that.
with that. It is through their own fault.
You're the first person I've heard that in a very long time.
It's a brilliant game.
I wasn't a fan. I don't know. I see the merit in it, but I don't know. When I think, I guess I'm just too strict in my thinking. When I think Banjo, I think platformer.
Okay.
It had platforming elements, though. It was just going to be different.
But I wasn't collecting jiggies. Give me my jiggies.
Now, what do you guys think about some of the other titles that they name dropped in this? Because beyond Banjo, they also said, I believe, Blast Corps and Battletoads. What do you guys think about those? And Viva Pinata, which I don't care about life sim games, so I forgot about that immediately.
I mean, the most likely, I would say, is Battletoads by far. Even though it's been forever since there's been a new one. I do think it has a lot of cash among the, I guess at this point, frankly, older gamers now, right?
Yeah.
I think it actually might not be the worst idea. It could be like the new Super Mario Brothers, bringing back some of those older gamers now who remember the game from when they were a kid, and as well as introducing it to a new demographic at the same time. I think that has the strongest possibility of being true, as well as being the one that would get the most attention. Viva Pinata, I mean, yeah, I'm totally indifferent to it. I feel like the game never made huge waves, at least definitely not after the first one. I mean, it's a possibility. It's possible. I hope that's not what he's talking about. That's the least exciting game of those four. And then Blast Corps, I could see. I also think it's on the unlikely side. It's not a super well-known game. I don't think it sold super well. I think it did okay. I don't think it sold super well. It's something that I could see as more being either a remake or a scaled down, Xbox Live title or something, or Xbox Live Arcade, I should say. I think Battletoads honestly has the most promise of anything on this list.
Yeah, I agree, and I think even Battletoads, I think that would also be an Xbox Live Arcade game. I don't think either Battletoads or Blast Corps would be a new retail release at all. I think they'd both be XBLA games, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't think they're gonna sell what would probably be a 2D beat 'em up Battletoads game for a full retail $60 disc price. It's that just like almost like Double Dragon Neon. It just beat 'em ups almost these days feel like they kind of have to be XBLA games or digital download games because they're smaller in scale. They're not really full on retail productions.
Well, that raises a good question in and of itself, because I agree with you that it probably would be an XBLA title if they go with if they go completely old school with it.
Yeah.
Again, like New Super Mario Brothers, although that was a full retail game.
Right.
But yeah, I think that wouldn't work as well in the case of Battletoads. I think an XBLA title would work. For whatever reason, though, the way Ken Lobb said it, and I'm probably it's just my own inference. It felt like to me like these would be true updates. So I was picturing it as being like a 3D remake.
Okay.
And that could be completely off base. I mean, I think now that you mentioned it, it could very well be a 2D title. So I don't know. Yeah, I guess what do you expect from that? Do you think it would just be like a modern version of a very the same take of the classic game, or?
When I read this as well, I thought it was a sort of a modern retelling where they take the game and its basic structure and make it a full retail release in the style of more modern games. Because
So you're saying like a 3D game then?
Yeah, like a 3D game.
Okay.
Like the original Battletoads was not just a straight beat 'em up. There's a ton of platforming in that game, and that's what made it so hard, is the platforming. Well, that and damn scooter section or whatever the hell that thing was that you were flying along on.
Oh, jeez.
But as far as like, there's a lot they could do with Battletoads, whether they want to take it the more dark and gritty type thing, if they want to go that route, or if they wanted to make it a little bit more cartoonish, they could totally make that in the same sort of vein as Ninja Turtles. Hell, I'm pretty sure that was inspired by Ninja Turtles. And they could have goofy fun with it and make it more for kids, or they can try and make it go a little more hardcore and have it be super challenging and maybe a little more of a fair challenge this time around, because if people do like their fair challenges, like games like Dark Souls and whatnot. So there's a lot of different ways they could take this and make it work, and I can see them. I'd like to see them attempt to try to update it for the modern consoles. It seems I'd be fine with them doing like a 2D platformer, beat 'em up, whatever on an XBLA, but that wouldn't convince me to get an Xbox One. Mm-hmm. A full retail release, 3D, making it something that could be a killer app for the system, that I could see maybe courting me to an Xbox One, but not an XBLA game. That's just lip service to me. But they could be great games. They could totally be great games, but I'm not going to buy a system just for downloadable titles.
I mean, yeah, you bring up a good point. Like, the way, I mean, whichever route they go, it could be a great game, but it really does change, it does change the possibility of the system seller being to just another great game that'll only appeal to people who probably already own the system. Kind of like how, like, Mega Man 9, I think a lot of people adore that game, but, there's no way it's going to really sell systems, whereas, like, a true reinvention of Mega Man, assuming they pulled it off well, could, right? Does that? Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I don't know where they're going to go with this. I mean, they already have done an update of a past game, being, on the original Xbox, or on Xbox 360, being Jetpack Refueled, and I really like that game, and it was very true to the original, but, again, it was just an XBLA title, and, it had, I think it had a very small, demographic reach.
As for whether Battletoads would be like a full-on 3D remake or like a 2D update, I almost kind of veer toward it being a 2D update, because we have seen, I don't know, like obviously Rare wasn't directly responsible for the new Killer Instinct, but that retained a 2D style as opposed to becoming a 3D fighting game. So it seems like whoever is in charge of Killer Instinct might see the value in keeping Rare's IP, the way people remember it, and just updating it for a new generation. So I don't know if they would be so bold as to go in a full 3D direction for Battletoads. I almost feel like that would be like Sega announcing a 3D remake of Streets of Rage. No one would be happy about that, because it's known for being one of the best 2D side-scrolling brawlers of all time. And Battletoads isn't quite on that pedigree, but it's still known for being a high-profile 90s 2D beat-em-up. And I just don't know if people would warm up to the idea of a 3D Battletoads game.
That's a good way of putting it. I mean, it would be a risk, and the safer option from a purely profit to, making your money back standpoint would be going the updated route, is making another 2D game. Actually,
I just had a thought. The safest route they could go, give Battletoads the way forward. They already did Double Dragon Neon. We can have a sequel to Double Dragon versus Battletoads, or whatever that game is called.
Right.
That's a good one. Yeah, there you go. So clearly we're all pretty excited for at least one or two of these games to be updated. But do you have any other hopes of what else they could do, either with these games or with other Rare IP you would like to see come back? Any other games you would like to see them update?
This is pretty much irrelevant, just because some of my favorite work that Rare has done has been with Nintendo franchises, and that's obviously never going to happen again, but it would be so nice to see another Diddy Kong Racing made by Rare, but obviously it's not going to happen. So I don't know. I Perfect Dark maybe, but I'm not a huge shooter guy, but Perfect Dark's pretty cool, but everyone knows Perfect Dark 0 is kind of terrible. So I mean, if they could do another Perfect Dark properly, then maybe that, but I don't know. A lot of my favorite work Rare has done has been with Nintendo franchises or is Banjo-Kazooie, so I've already touched on that.
I think it'd be interesting to see them take on like Jet Force Gemini or even Conquer again. I haven't played a lot of Jet Force Gemini, but I remember it being at least memorable. And I think it's a unique aesthetic that it could still work in today's game. Today's games just sort of that same sort of Conquer thing where it's sort of kiddie looking, but it's also kind of hyper violent. And I don't know, that seems like it would work well with the Xbox One framework. With what they do is like they do like their shooters, and that game, at least Jet Force Gemini, would work really well in that context.
Yeah, it could. I feel like part of the problem, like just hearing, you talk about some of those games, I really did enjoy back in the day, and just thinking about them now and how I don't really care about them, and it does go to show like how mismanaged their IP has been. Like they've done such a poor job keeping those games updated and in people's minds. Like they really just wasted money to some degree on, like just not maintaining these once great franchises. I do think Perfect Dark would, be one of the better odds of coming back, and as well as potential. Like they could do a lot still with that franchise. I personally would love to see them go back to the original look they at first revealed for Perfect Dark on the Xbox. Going back to the original Xbox, which had like the anime look to it. At the time, I wasn't a fan. In hindsight, I think that would have been a much better direction for the game to go. And the art style is pretty striking, and I would love if they did something along those lines. Just kind of like I really don't care about the story or really anything about that game besides the gameplay. So to me, it's an open slate. Just keep Joanna Dark, update everything else about the game, make it a good shooter like the original, and I'm on board.
Yeah, I mean the remake of the HD port of the original on Xbox Live Arcade was much better than Perfect Dark Zero. It was actually really well done.
Yeah, it was. Absolutely.
So if they could, so were the HD ports of the both Banjo games for that matter. So if they could keep the original's gameplay and just make it a current generation games in terms of visuals and music, I think it could be great.
I'm with you. Alright, well I think that wraps up for us here, so thanks guys for watching. If you liked our discussion, make sure to like and follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain, which you can find links to in the description below, which is a good way to keep up to date on everything we post. And of course, keep an eye on GameXplain.com for hopefully more on these rare titles in the near future, and other things gaming as well. Alright, thanks guys. Bye.